Hello, and welcome to Hanratty on Karate. So I was chatting with a lady from the UK a couple of weeks ago, Francesca Charlton. She runs Budo Mindset magazine, which is a UK magazine. I think it's online as well. Lots of interesting articles in there, non-political, just karate and karate-related stuff. So it's kind of interesting. We were chatting over internet, like I do with a lot of people. She asked me what my views were on kata application. This is something that I've done a lot of over the years because my belief is one of my mottos that I have up in my club in calligraphy and also translated is kata without ego, and most importantly, form follows function. So it's all very well doing a technique, but if you don't know why, then what's the point, all right? Now, over the years, most katas have evolved. If you look at some of the old videos, and I've got some videos from the 60s, JKA people doing kata, they do it a little bit different now, and it's evolved. And you would think it would be evolved in the applications, but not so much. It seems to be that a lot of organizations change the kata just for the sake of changing it. For example, a couple of my students went to a JKA seminar here in Calgary a couple of weeks ago, and I don't mind where they go. My belief is you can learn from anyone, anywhere, at any time. I learn from some white belts walking in the door, whether it's attitude or how they move their bodies or whatever. Everybody does it different. But anyway, they were talking about this seminar that was put on, a weekend course by the JKA instructor. So I was asking them what it was like. They weren't too impressed, to be honest. They said they didn't do any applications whatsoever. There was some changes made to basic stances that didn't make sense to them. Because I encourage my students to ask, if you're doing it, why are you doing it, okay? It's very important that you know what the application is, otherwise forget it. But some of the changes seem to me just for the sake of change. For example, they said the thumb position at the opening of Basai Dai, where your right hand is a fist and your left hand then closes it, they're going to move the thumb position. And I said, why? And he said, well, it's just something that's come down from headquarters in brackets. They don't know why. So I was kind of a little bemused by this. But I was talking to, say, Fran Charlton, and she said, what's your opinion on the applications that are shown in the Best Karate series? And I'll be honest with you, they're rubbish. They're absolute rubbish. Now, at the time Best Karate came out, JKA was in its infancy, and so was a lot of other things around the organization of karate. You know, it didn't matter which organization, a lot of it was in its infancy. And a lot of people had no idea what the techniques were for. I did an interview with Nishiyama in the late 80s. I got about 16 hours on tape. I think I still have the tapes somewhere. And I wrote an article for Terry O'Neill. And he said that when they started the Japanese instructor school, the JKA instructor school, and he was one of the founders, and he used to stand in line, you know, when the young guys were instructing us, just to make sure that they had good presence and they were doing it right. I asked him at the time, well, did you show a lot of applications? And he said, no. He said, applications didn't come into it. We wanted to know the how to build power, how to transfer power into your target or your opponent, and basically get to the point where you could finish with one blow, hikanisatsu. So everything was on the development of power and how you could do that through the techniques that you used. But it wasn't an application of techniques, and I tried to bring the subject round to how does that transmit into kata, because we all know that there's three tenets of karate, like Kion, kata, and kumite. A lot of people now go straight from Kion to kumite or just do kata, but they don't know why, or they have no idea what the moves mean. Now, you get some demonstrations, particularly after the team events with WKF, and I've seen a few of those demonstrations, but they bear very little resemblance to what you're doing in the kata. And it's all tailored to fit the move. And of course it all is. It's like any kind of drill that you do in the dojo. It's all supposition. Like, suppose the guy does this, then you can do this. All of your setups are like that. Hopefully you'll try and remember and utilize a technique if it comes to the real thing. Maybe it's something from the kata. It might be just as simple as butting the guy right between the eyes, which isn't in any kata, but it's quite effective. I can attest to that. So anyway, Fran Charlton asked me what I thought about the applications in the Best Karate series, and I just said they're rubbish. And I referred to one particular application which has always blown my mind. It's in volume 9 if you're interested, which is Niju Shiho. It's in Niju Shiho. After you've done your Mawashi Uki and you turn, sweep down with the Gedan Shuto and then come up with a Jodan Haito. So you're striking the guy on the side of the neck. And then you're supposed to bring the other hand up. And Nakayama's explanation is that a sudden clapping of the hands will make your opponent unbalanced and fire a kick that you can then deal with by grabbing the kick and hitting the knee, which it just doesn't make sense. And of course, when you look at the technique and analyze it, reverse engineer it, it just doesn't work at all. There's so many more different things that could come out of that. So that's just one of the silly applications. There's quite a few, of course, even going back to Heian Nidan. Now, when I'm teaching beginners katas, if you know your techniques, you can make anything in the kata work for you as long as your opponent is attacking you the way you want. Of course, right? It's like that Jim Carrey skit on karate where the person doesn't attack him properly and ends up getting stabbed 3 or 4 times. You can't say attack me this way. A person's going to do whatever he feels like if he's attacking you. The best way to deal with anybody attacking you is to perceive their intention and take it away from them. This is the best form of self-defense. You should only ever block to make a counter. Don't block just to not get hit. If you don't want to get hit, move away. More evasion, rather. If you're going to block, get inside, block, destroy his intention, and then counter immediately. So only ever block to counter. Only ever block to hit. And a lot of the applications that you see just don't take this into account, which is kind of strange, but that's the way it goes. Now, everybody has their own version of applications. And if you look at some of the scholars who have studied kata, and some of them have studied it to the extremes, but I'll just quote Pat McCarthy. He believes that katas are a solo enactment of 2-man drills. It could well be right. There's no argument against that. I honestly think he's probably right. You practice, say, for example, just a simple shuto or knife hand block, if you like. I use knife hand blocks in different ways, and I can give you quite a few different applications just on a knife hand block. I mean, you can cover with your right hand, strike the elbow with your left hand, and open them up for the shuto to the target area, which would be carotid jugular vagus nerve center in the side of the neck. You can do it from the inside, where you use the lead hand to poke towards the eyes, and then follow through with the shuto. The application is all supposition, and it all depends on what your opponent does. And you can't dictate what your opponent does, so it's all supposition, as I said. But reverse engineering the movements in kata is extremely interesting, and it's really good for perfecting your techniques. So when I'm doing applications, and we all do applications of Bunkai, and there's a lot of hidden techniques, as Nishiyama said, there's independent blocks where you don't see the finishing technique. And this is one thing he stressed. He himself never ever taught Bunkai, and I was down at his dojo a lot, and I attended a lot of his camps, and I never seen him teach Bunkai ever. He taught you how to develop power, how to use your body to the best of your ability to destroy your opponent with single techniques. And he was brilliant in that. As a technician, I don't think anybody ever beat Nishiyama. And the way he put it across was amazing. So the applications, that you do, I do them in 3 scenarios. One is a classical scenario, and you'll see this in the Best Karate series or in Bunkai applications on YouTube where the guy stands in Gadambarai front stance and attacks with a stepping punch, oisuki, okay? This is easy to put anything you want into that, all right? Because you're telling the person what to do, you know what he's going to do, you know he's going to attack you. Usually with the right hand stepping punch, you got all day to think about it. I mean, it doesn't matter how fast they are, and people who could smack you with oisuki. And I've had people come up and say, oisuki's never work in a fight. I've seen quite a few fights, and I've seen Frank Brown do an oisuki in a fight and knock the guy flying, right? So it's how you put it. Anything will work if you get the right opportunity, the right timing, and the right target. It will all work. But it's having the mindset to spot that and think of how you're going to set it up. And that's the setup. You try to get your opponent to do what you want him to do, and then you can handle it. When your opponent does something that you have no idea is coming, that's hard to handle, right? So, yeah, we do it from a classical position with oisuki, stepping punch, or maigeri, or a single technique. Then I'll do the same thing from an on-guard position, a jukamai position. So we'll do the same thing, and it generally works just as good. You may not be stepping back, you may be shifting back, you may be shifting in. Depends on what your timing is and what your application is in response to that particular attack. And then we do it from a street fighting position. The guy's just going to come at you, and you try to use that application from the kata. This is the most interesting because you come up with a lot of stuff that's absolutely not in the kata at all. But it's a good way of trying to reverse engineer the katas and try to put them into a two-man drill, which is what Patrick McCarthy spent years and years studying. He expresses it all really well in his tapes and videos and his magazines and books. So he's probably one person I admire that's got absolute depth in applications and the study of kata and what it's for. He put together his own system, Koryuchinadi, and devised drills that work from a close-in point of view. His blocks work, his attacks work, stuff like this. It doesn't go so much on the development of power and does a little bit too much going to ground for me. I've been in quite a few fights, and the last thing you ever want to do is go to ground. Almost anybody who works doors or the security for a living will tell you, don't go to ground if you can help it, okay? So it's just something that I would never do. But as far as applications go, you can make up some interesting drills for applications, and they're beneficial in your training. They make you repeat the techniques. They show you how the technique can be deployed. It didn't say it always will be deployed that way. It always will be applied that way. That's not the point. But what you do is you keep the technique as it's performed in the kata. Keep the technique and then make it work in a situation and try to change the situation that you make it work in. Like, not a straight oisuki every time, because that's very impractical and, highly improbable. What you want to do is change the technique that's coming at you and try to apply the same technique in the kata to nullify it, all right? So change your attack and then nullify it with the techniques that you practicing from the kata. Now, there's some katas where the applications are very obscure and hard to see. But if you play around with them long enough, you're going to come up with an application that will work. And here's the thing. Stumpy, my old mate Steve Cattle, used to say, if it doesn't work fast, it doesn't work, right? And it's so true, right? People aren't going to come at you slow. People aren't going to roll their arm out for you to do an arm block, take down, throw them over your shoulder. That's not going to work, okay? Anytime you turn your back on a person to do a throw, they're going to grab you around the neck or something like that. This is obvious, although it doesn't seem obvious to some of the people you see doing applications on YouTube or whatever. So make sure that you practice it so that you can make that application work for most techniques that are thrown at you, all right? And keep it exactly the same if you can. And don't be afraid to add, because as Nishiyama said, a lot of independent blocks don't show the finishing technique. And if you keep in mind the point that you only ever block to make a counter, all right? You only ever block so that you can apply a finishing technique, then you're going to find that a lot of these techniques will open up windows that you didn't realize were there. And, you can push it on a little bit more and explore a little bit more. Techniques against kicks, like the silly one in Niju Shiho, they're not going to work. Okay? Catching a kick, catching the heel of a snap kick is dangerous. If you ever watched any really good fighters, they'll use that snap, knowing a guy's going to try and kick it, but they'll snap it back to pull him into a punch. All right? So that's not good. It can also break your fingers, and once you've got your fingers broken in a fight, you're pretty much defenseless. Okay? So think about the katas, and one of the easiest katas, of course, to do applications for is Niji Shiho. And when you think about the kata, it really lends itself to applications that you can go from a street fighting point of view. Other katas that are easy to show applications for is chinte. Chinte is pretty wonderful kata. It's a little out of the mainstream technique style, if you like, of Shotokan, because there's some great applications in it and different use of different weapons, but very effective, extremely effective. Okay, so chinte is a great kata to work applications from. But as I say, if you get your opponent doing whatever you want, you can apply every single kata you want. Like I do an application for hand showdown. I just block, and instead of oisuki, what I'll do is a forearm strike to the opponent's neck, grab him round the neck, and turn back for a throw, which would be the third movement in hand showdown. Then, of course, the Tetsuyuchi, which is, somebody grabs your hand. No, block it, and then come down Tetsui for an attack. Immediately step in, but go past his head, grab a garment or an ear or a hair, and immediately do a pull to the side, sweeping at the same time. And there's your downward block before you do your first rising blocks, Hagyuki. Okay, so it's quite easy, and I have students practice this, and then when they come to do the kata on its own, it makes so much more sense. If you're doing anything on your own rather than an opponent, of course, there's no timing or distance involved, so your movements get bigger. And you get bigger, you're exercising more muscles, you're developing reach, your flexibility, and you're expanding on it, okay? So it's a good way of practicing how to do kata and how to apply it from a very basic point of view. And then you can get a little funky later on and go into a jukamai position using the same techniques, push you through it and see how it works for you. I find it works very well. It looks like people are beating each other up all the way through, but all they're doing is applying kata, okay? And again, reverse engineer it to suit your body type, your techniques, your favorite techniques or whatever, and see how it works for you. So again, thanks Francesca, for bringing that up. It gave me a little bit of a subject to chat upon this week, and hopefully you guys can come up with some applications of your own and let me know, because I'm always willing to learn. Okay, so take care, and we'll talk to you again.